So I think you can go ahead, Diana.
Thank you, Bill. All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's June 11th. This is the Madaket Area Plan Work Group. I'm Diana Brown. We'll start with a roll call of everyone I see on the screen. When I call your name, just respond. Bill Greeter,
Present.
Soderberg,
Present.
Peter Heffenreffer,
Present.
Bruce Mandel,
Present.
Bob Kucharvi,
Present.
Sheila David,
Present.
Kim Watchman.
Present.
Wonderful, thank you. This is an open meeting, the Madaket Area Plan Work Group. It's being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order as of March 12th, 2020. We are talking to the town about whether we can extend the ability to continue this meeting via Zoom, or if we have to meet in person, and we can, we will modify as we go along. That order posted with agenda material for this meeting allows public bodies to convene remotely so long as public access to deliberations is reasonably provided. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that if you share your computer, anyone can see what's on it, so be careful. And anything that you say or broadcast on your computer will be recorded. Materials provided to the members for the meeting or provided during the meeting are, unless otherwise noted, available on the town's website. And as we did at our last meeting, we'll try to differentiate between what are interim working items versus what are public items. In meeting materials for today's meeting, what were distributed were the goals and objective the outline for the 9 chapters with the topics that we identified at our last meeting and the assignments. During the meeting, I'll introduce the agenda topics and speakers, and I will call on you if you either raise your hand or if you press your little raise your hand icon. Please remember to stay muted unless you're talking, and direct comments through me to avoid any crosstalk. And if there are any members of the public who join us, we will allow them a chance to weigh in as well. And then finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote of the members. So with that said, I'll move on to the meeting. Sorry to have to spend time reading that. The first is approval of the agenda. Did everybody get a copy of the agenda, either on the official meeting notice or in my email?
Yes.
Yes.
Are there any changes or suggestions to the agenda? Okay, so then we will go forward. So then the next is approve the draft minutes from our meeting of May 21st. We did not post those yet because I wanted you to approve them before we post them as a public document. So are there any comments or motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve. It's Bob.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Peter. And by roll call of the committee members, I'll ask all in favor, or how do you vote? Lars?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Bruce?
Sorry.
Bob?
Yes.
Sheila, you weren't here, but you get a vote.
Oh, am I on the committee?
Yes, you are.
Oh, I thought I was just attending sort of ad hoc, but okay.
Well,
Yes.
you are ad hoc, but you are an ad hoc committee member, I guess. So we'll let you vote.
Okay.
And
Yes.
Kitty?
Oh, yes.
All right, thank you. Bill, you don't get to vote.
No.
So with that, the minutes from May 21st are approved and we will send them to the town for their website. Bill, do you just want to give, while we're thinking about the town and posting things, do you want to just give everybody a little update on what the town is proposing for area plans?
So the town got a hold of us. We have to submit all of the agenda and all that stuff in reserve one of the Zoom meeting rooms. And they've actually got 3 different accounts. There's so many meetings going on. And they've been so popular, they're trying to figure out if they're able to do a hybrid going forward. But they've got all kinds of legal issues with that. And we heard the other night at the selectmen's meeting, the appointed committees will probably be meeting this way at least through the summer, if not longer, because they're short of meeting space. So I'm going to let Kathy Slattery in. And so they've set up a login for that. We send all the stuff in and they post it. So we've got ironed out that process, which took a while. The next thing they want to do is they contacted us and they wanted to do a page on the town website for the Madaket area plan. And they were vague on what they wanted for particulars. So I chatted with Diana and I've since passed it on to the town. The suggestion would be, instead of having a page for each of the area associations, of which there are 23 others, and they're all either going to be tweaking their area plans or creating area plans. And it just seems crazy to have that many pages up there. So the suggestion was to create one page when you go to the town website for area plans. And then as associations get approved and whatever, it's one-stop shopping. So we'll see how that goes. The website is difficult enough to get around without adding 600 more pages. So anyway, we'll keep you appraised of what's up. And Diana's got, she's come up with this plan of, we only push out the things on the public side that's been approved by you guys, by the work group. So like the minutes weren't published until you all vote to approve. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is to review our draft outline of the chapters and topics and assignments that we started at our last meeting. And then we had some updates subsequently from some people who were not at the meeting or who were at the meeting and thought of other things.
Excuse me.
So, yeah, Emily's coming in too, I see.
Kathy Slattery is joined and Emily is joining now.
Good. Hey, Emily. Congratulations on surviving town meeting.
Thank you. It's nice to be beyond that.
Yeah, you had a lot on your plate.
Yeah, it was a long day, but at least we had nice weather.
Yep.
Thank you.
So all you missed so far, you and Kathy, I assume she can hear, is we approved the agenda, the draft minutes from the last meeting, and now we're going to look at that outline with the topics and assignments that we talked about last time. I wasn't planning to go through all of this so just as a little bit for Sheila, because she is new to this group, everybody, Sheila David is the representative from Fisher's Landing. So we're happy to have you. And I know Sheila, Seth had a lot of concerns about whether or not Fisher's Landing would be officially part of this area plan.
Right.
And I understand that from my history with Fisher's Landing. And while certainly there are some areas, there are some sections of this area plan that do not apply to Fisher's Landing, such as zoning. There are topics that may apply and that you may care about, such as sewer or coastal resilience or water quality. And so we thought that it would make sense for Fisher's Landing to participate in the sections where it makes sense.
Yes.
And you can ignore the others, just like for Emily Molden with the Land Council or Kitty with Linda Loring Foundation. They don't really care about, housing on their property per se, but they care about a lot of the other environmental things. So
Yes.
that is the idea. We'd rather be inclusive than exclusive, and we'd like to help give Fisher's Landing a bigger voice on areas that Fisher's Landing does care about, like sewer. So That's the point of this. And so what we tried to do, and I hope you will jump in, is we tried to identify the chapters for the area plan are fixed. That's an outline that we are given and that we're supposed to abide by. What goes inside the chapters is pretty much up to us. And so what we were brainstorming on at our last meeting, and will continue to evolve as we do work on this, are some of the key topics that we all care about, or that some of us care about at least, and the topics we care about, and we tried to plug them into a chapter so at least we would have a place to focus on them without having an unduly complex, like let's put zoning and everything because it touches everything. Well, we know it does, but let's just stick it in one spot, to address the issues. So that's kind of what we did. And then people identified areas that they cared about where they would help do the work on it. So that's our general thought in terms of how we're laying out the area plan, with then the thought that there will be subgroups working on each chapter offline, if you will. And then when the subgroups are ready, we'll have a discussion on a particular chapter at a meeting so that we all don't have to totally hold hands and do every piece together, but we'll try to get this done in some kind of a reasonable amount of time and a reasonable amount of thoroughness. And then again, we're going to get smarter as we go through this. And we also talked about the need for getting community involvement and how we might want to do that. And I could see that that could also change as we get smarter. I looked at the Tom Nevers plan, thanks to Bruce, who kept reminding me to look at it. And there were a couple of things in the Tom Nevers plan that I thought we could learn from. One is on the point I just raised about community input. The Tom Nevers group did two things that were interesting. One was they did focus group sessions with handfuls of people on different key topics. So in our particular case, we could say sewer as a topic, or we could say water quality or groundwater as a topic. And we could pick a couple of topics and have people who are interested sign up for those and do groups to figure out, get broader in-depth community input on those topics. Another thing they did was a broad survey of the community on all sorts of topics. And maybe that comes before the focus groups actually, but the survey gathered broad community input on a lot of things so that they could say, they could understand better how the community felt on all of those things. And I think both of those are really good ideas for gathering input. Although my inclination would be that right now that maybe we're not smart enough on everything we want to ask, and we don't want to overburden people with 5 surveys, so maybe we wait a little bit before we do something. But in any case, I think it's an option that we could consider going forward. Somebody's pulling up the Tom Nevers area plan.
Yeah, that was me. I was a little late. I should have done that when you were talking about the different sections. Sorry.
That's okay. But another thing that Tom Nevers did in their area plan is the structure on the chapters, which I kind of liked. Every chapter has, you could pick any of them, but it has an overview of this is what it is, what we think the future could hold, or what our dreams for the future are on this topic, or on this chapter. Then what are the key topics that we're addressing? And then what are the recommendations that we have? And in some cases, their recommendations are, we love everything just as it is and we don't want it ever to change. And in some cases, their recommendations are very action oriented in terms of we need to do A, B, and C. And then in the chapter 9, which is the implementation chapter, they went and they went and looked at all the other chapters, looked at the recommendations that were actionable and put those into the implementation plan. And in their particular case, the Tom Nevers Association, I believe, stepped up and said they would take ownership of the implementation plan in terms of trying to drive it. But I thought the somewhat common, consistent structure of every chapter was helpful for reading it, because if you just wanted to go look at the recommendations, you could do that without having to get lost in reading everything in the chapter. And I do a lot of writing with my job. And one thing I keep learning over and over again is that no one reads anything. And so I always try to, of course, I know you may be different, but I always try to figure out how to sort things so that people can jump to just what they want to read and just what they care about. And you don't lose them in, like I didn't look at the Tom Nevers plan for a long time because I saw it was 160 pages and that just stopped me. But when you actually go and look at the structure of it and how it's organized, a lot of that is the detail of everything that was in the focus groups and the detail of everything in the survey. So you don't need to read 160 pages. So anyway, we can learn from others, and I think we should liberally copy everybody else's good ideas wherever we find them, whether it's structure or content or ideas. So that was kind of my new thoughts on this. But back to our outline and topics, just kind of quickly looking through each one of them. I'd like to open it up. Are there comments about changes, or have you thought about, something else that we missed or that we should move around, or areas? Peter.
So one thing I sort of discovered as I'm kind of trying to bring myself up to speed on all this stuff is, and this was an email that Bruce had sent around about where we think the town is relative to town sewer out in Madaket, is whether the best place to spend time is on services and facilities if someone's interested in dealing with the ramifications of sewer, public sewer, or is it in the world of zoning, which is land use? And it strikes me that the zoning is really the solution, if you will, to whatever's going to happen with public sewerage in Madaket. So I'm perhaps just speaking for myself, thinking I might ask to be moved from services and facilities to land use, if that's appropriate. I just don't know if sewerage is kind of a fait accompli, how much I or we can do in that world. That's a little bit of a question as well as a statement.
Bruce?
Thank you. Lars makes a good point, but I might.
It was Peter.
I'm sorry, Peter. Peter makes a good point, but I would like to suggest that while we're working on this initially, plans and comments may end up in, for lack of a better word, two separate chapters, and then we can work on merging them and refining them and put them where we think it belongs. So I'm hopeful that everyone will have a little input into the Google Drive files, I guess, or folders that we create for the various chapters, and would comment on that. And then maybe one or two of us could kind of try to sort that out and organize it for presentation to the various groups. So those are my thoughts on that. And I would hope the folders that we create can be used. For example, the Tom Nevers plan is posted if anybody wants to take the time to look at it in context of what Diana has related.
Thank you. Did somebody else have their hand up? Kitty, did you?
Could I, this is Sheila.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I obviously, this is all new to me, so I want to ask a question about the chapters. It sounds like there's quite a few communities around the island that are doing something similar. Is that correct?
Yes, either they have done it and they think it's fine for now, or they have one and they're dusting it off just like we are dusting ours off.
And what are these chapters being submitted to somebody?
Yes, our plan, not the chapters individually, our plan as a whole, when we are done, gets submitted to the NP, the Planning and Economic, whatever it is, Planning Board, to be formally accepted. And then once it is formally accepted, then it is a living public document that gets referred to by a lot of different committees and groups. So for example, and it gives us teeth to help fight or change things that we want to change. So for example, in the first Madaket area plan that we started in 2001 and finished and got accepted in 2006, one of the big things we did there was to rezone a lot of Madaket to be more rural and less dense and less commercial than it used to be zoned. My property was zoned RC, what was it called? RC2, which is 50% build out and it could be commercial.
Mm.
And so, like we've made major changes around a lot of Madaket to make the zoning more restrictive. We
Okay.
also, we took some positions, like we laid down in the road saying we were against town water, but we since have changed our mind about that. But
Yeah.
the zoning, we made several zoning changes and we stood behind the area plan to give us the teeth to be able to go make those changes. And the plus department supported us, the planning board supported us, and it was very powerful. And so we have heard subsequently, well, your area plan doesn't address this topic, whatever it is that's coming up, solar panels. Well, yeah, nobody had solar panels back then, so we didn't even think to address it.
Right.
So that's why we think it's important for us to take a stand so that whether it's an HDC issue about solar panels or pools or how do we feel about our paper roads or our dirt roads and keeping them dirt versus paved? Those are the kinds of things that we, in addition to much more difficult things like sewer and some of those zoning issues, one of our concerns about sewer is if sewer comes through, you could have massive build out on the lots that we currently can't support because you need the separation between water and septic. And
So
we have a current regulation that stops that.
Sorry, so these plans have actually helped, they've helped stop certain things. That's very good. I know that here in Fisher's Landing, and myself included, I have to do a whole new septic system because if you want to add anything to your house or if you want to sell your house, you have to get an inspection. And the last year it failed inspection, even though, everything's working. It's, I don't understand how you fail inspection and still have everything working. But anyway, there were 5 guys hanging around outside with their heads hanging down. And I thought, uh-oh. So anyway, so we have to get this whole new alternative technology system because we're close, not far from the pond, maybe 600-700 feet from the pond, long pond. And that's, $48,000. And so we did take out a loan from the town at 2%, which is pretty good. But this is going to become more and more, and they did tell us, I hope this is true, they did tell us that if we have this new septic system and for some reason the town sewer comes in a few years, that we have a 10-year grace period because we put this new system in.
You can thank Bill Greeter and Charlie Stott and Bruce Mandel and a few others for that grace period.
Thank goodness. Yes, I thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, just for a point of clarification, just so you can spread the word with the Fishers group, because it was a challenge to get the word to the Fishers group. So it doesn't matter how close you are to the pond, where Fishers Landing is in particular, and it's within the watershed district that the Board of Health and the state and the feds have designated.
Right.
So you could be at the top of a hill with the entrance of Madaket Road near nothing, and still you have to do it. So it's with that whole section of Madaket. And that's one of the reasons we really wanted Fisher to become involved, because Fisher wasn't either getting the word or understanding some of the different regs that the town is doing. And so we're really thrilled that Fisher decided to participate. And so the burden will be on you, unfortunately, to try to, get the word out to your group, your neighbors and friends, that there's some very important stuff that's going to be happening. And this is probably the most chance you'll get to participate.
Yeah. Oh, makes sense. Thank you.
Leslie Forbes just joined.
I'm in 3 different Zoom meetings at once. How does that work? Except you can't be. You have to sign out of one to go to another.
Well,
Anyway,
this is the fun one, Leslie.
I should have known.
We are going through the outline right now and just talking about any potential changes or omissions or whatever. Any other comments right now? Okay. Then with that being said, let's move on to the first chapter, which is goals and objectives. And one thing that Bruce, maybe you and I can work on offline is let's come up with a naming scheme for how to name things, because we've got so many files on the Google Drive that are named something like Madaket Area Plan that you can't tell what they are until you open them up. And so maybe we start for each of these chapter folders, we call it chapter 1, chapter 2, and then whatever stuff, that's under our outline can just go into that appropriate chapter so we can find it, just for lack of anything else. But we can come up with something and then we'll communicate it to you all.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because especially with multiple people touching it. Well, I saw that Bruce, Peter, and Lars at least touched the outline, and I did too. So has everybody had a chance to, or the goals and objectives piece, I mean, so has everybody had a chance to at least look at it a little bit? So,
Dan,
yes, Bruce.
that folder was created kind of randomly with various thoughts and ideas as kind of a discussion starting document. It wasn't meant to be, hey, this is what we ought to be doing. It was more of, hey, here's an idea, here's a thought. Linda Loring said this about goals. Emily's group had some ideas, and I kind of plucked some of them out and stuck them in there without ascribing them to anybody. And the intent was for all the committee members, not just the folks that say, I want to be involved in chapter 1 goals, but for everyone to be able to go in, read something, open a parentheses, put their initials BRM and say, oh, this is insane, forget it. Or, oh, I like this, let's tweak this. So I think that would be helpful, and that was the idea.
Thank you. Well, I think that what is in here is actually the right track. I mean, I liked a lot of the things that you put in that are under the goal or purposes section. And my only real comment was I thought some of them got a little bit too wordy for the goals and objectives. I mean, they're good for explaining what we're talking about, but I didn't think we had to get into, all of the dots that followed some of the higher level bullets. But I loved, I think, to me, like the real goal for this is preserving and protecting Madaket's traditional low density, rural, low key, quiet community character, however we want to describe that. It seems like that's at the heart of what we're trying to do. And then, but then there are a lot of other pieces of this that I think are important too. I mean, the fact that this can serve as a guide to other organizations and groups, like that's critical. And so we should write it with that thought in mind, because that will help with our recommendations and actions. And if we think about future investments in Madaket, that's critical, because that talks about development and roads and sewer and everything. Certainly defining the appropriate zoning and regulations seems to make a lot of sense. Water quality, and keep, kind of keep going. I just sort of bolded things because I thought I think you've got the guts of what we want to do in here. It seems to me like covers a lot of the bases that we talk about. And it also kind of sets up, it ties in with what the outline of the document is to a great degree as well.
I'm surprised you thought that what I wrote was too wordy.
For those of you that don't know that inside joke, Bruce's alphabet has twice as many letters as the rest of us, and he uses every one of them.
Aha.
And you already know what I think, that no one reads, so we have to be careful what we say. Well, what are other, I mean, I kind of gave you my comments, but what do other people think in terms of these, some of these general comments? We can tweak wording and so on if we need to, but it's more, do you agree on that these are the goals of this project?
I agree.
Lars
Yeah.
agrees.
Yeah, they
Sheila
sound
agrees.
sound
Yep,
quite,
Bob agrees.
Uh,
Yeah, I agree.
Is there something in there about planning for coastal resilience? Or do we leave that out?
Oh, we might have forgotten it. Let's see.
Well, we've got, I addressed it in one line as climate change, driven by abuse of the area. And we talk a little bit about the access to the beaches and whatnot, and how to plan and research that whole objective. But I think that's a good point. There is one paragraph on the third page about coastal resiliency that I extracted from a presentation by Natural Resources. So there's 2 bullet points and a sub bullet point there that we can probably expand upon. And then my comments about outdoor lighting kind of got stuffed in there, but it doesn't really belong there. My main adventure there is I found out that with the proliferation of pool applications in Madaket, there is absolutely no regulation on the island about outdoor lighting for pools. And that affects neighbors and it affects the community, especially when they're on late at night and things like that. So, but that's something we can address. And I'm not sure it belongs in goals and policy statements, although that's something that we want to cubbyhole somewhere in the 9 chapters.
Well, let's stick it in a chapter if we don't already have it, because that's a good point, Bruce. I agree with you. I don't think it belongs in the goals and objectives, but it does belong in a chapter.
So we can move that, but I don't think we need to dwell on that here. But let's just make a note that it needs to move.
Okay.
so this is coastal erosion in the, under the coastal resiliency, or is that part of it?
It's on page 3 of the draft that Diana distributed.
Okay,
But again, that could go somewhere else. Remember, these were random thoughts that occurred to me over the last year or so that I've been cubbyholing. And I'm going to be sending out similar folders once we sort out how to do this and name them on things like pools and outdoor lighting and all the various subjects, solar. You know, there's no solar bylaw on the island. The only thing that controls it is 2 pages of a document called Building with Nantucket in Mind, and it's based on technology that doesn't exist anymore. Solar panels have become much more toxic and much more efficient since then, but it does say for Madaket, for example, that the preferred location is ground-mounted arrays, not on roofs, and that makes sense environmentally. But it doesn't make sense for people that want to maintain ground cover opportunities if they put, so these are issues that we're going to have to discuss.
Well, on your first question, Kitty, is, I mean, isn't erosion separate from coastal resiliency? Or do you think it's a subset?
It's part of it. Erosion of the banks and dunes, for example, at the Madaket Beach is part of the resiliency of that area. And, you know, Kitty probably has some good input on that too.
Not kidding.
Emily and I would both be able to speak to that, but resiliency, coastal resiliency is probably the better topic heading for something like that, because it does encompass erosion, it encompasses sea level rise, as well as the other impacts of climate change. Do you agree, Emily?
I agree. Yeah, Sheila, yes, I agree.
Oh,
I think Sheila brought that question up, not.
Yes.
okay.
Sheila, sorry,
Sorry,
Sheila brought it.
sorry.
I was looking at the document and not looking at the voice.
I would agree as well. I think that, yeah, whether it's coastal adaptation or coastal resilience, something like that would certainly encompass issues like erosion and sea level rise and increased flooding, all of that. And while I am unmuted, I think when I was looking at the document and I saw the note about coastal resilience, I hadn't quite realized that looking now, it doesn't seem like it is a very clearly stated goal or objective. So it would be great, I think, to more formalize that. And I also had noted Bruce's comment and question about the docks and piers in Madaket Harbor. And at some point, whatever chapter that's part of, I'm happy to help clarify what the existing bylaw allows.
Great. I think we stuck it under number 7, services and facilities. Well, that's town piers and docks, not private one. Private, I guess, would go with that.
You
What-
could put private in there.
Tell me what we're talking, which item we're talking about?
Piers and docks.
Sorry, I just talked about a few different items.
Okay, got you.
I think you could put it in number 7. Just have it be private as well as public. I would like something that is near and dear to my heart, as well as pool lighting, but we could bump it up a notch to be more policy oriented, which is dark skies, to try and maintain Madaket as a dark sky. We don't have dark sky designation. There is such a thing. But I think we've got as much dark sky as anybody on the island, and we ought to seek to preserve that. And that could be a goal and objective, and pools would be included in that. But so you don't need to focus it so much on pools and move it to a policy statement about dark skies.
And that
That's-
would include issue.
That would include pools.
That would include lighting, the lighting I'm talking about.
Oh, yes, it would include outdoor lighting and landscape lighting. There's a lot of uplighting going on.
I have a separate folder on that, Leslie, that I haven't posted yet, but now that you mention it, maybe I'll scan that and get it to Diana so that we can have it put on the shared drive thing with a proper name. Thanks for bringing that up.
Emily?
I was just going to mention there is some state legislation that's being proposed right now specifically about dark skies, and it might be useful to pull some of the language or the goals and objectives of that legislation into the document as well, just as a helpful template, which I'm happy to share.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Diana?
Bill?
One quick thought. Since all of the area associations are being asked to create a plan or tweak a plan, and it would seem this topic would be included in there, it might also be useful to engage with Mariah Mitchell because of their observatory or whatever, to give them a heads up, and it would probably add some strength to any bullet points or information in a plan. Mariah Mitchell was able to finagle a bagel and get input into every single association. So it's not just Madaket looking for dark skies.
Mhm.
I'm happy to talk to Jason about that. I think that's a great idea. See, we're already getting smarter than we were in our last meeting.
Hey, Diana, just one organizational thought. As Bruce has said, these are a lot of kind of very good thoughts, but scattered thoughts. For the goals and objectives, should they kind of line up topically with what we're about to tackle in each of our chapters so that it kind of flows?
That would be really nice, yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to make a comment in the document itself. It's a Word document.
Yeah.
It's not protected. just, hey, maybe this belongs here or that. I think that would be very helpful.
Sure. No, I just thought of it now, so I will do so.
Thank you. That's great. What chapter do we put dark skies on and lighting underneath?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have a list of the chapters right in front of me. Does anyone have those 9 chapters? And perhaps we could pluck one out right now.
Maybe land use, maybe? I don't know.
Or natural and cultural resources?
Yep, that works too.
Yeah.
And we don't have to cubbyhole it in a specific chapter yet. I think what we ought to do is refine our thoughts on what we want the dark skies statements to be. And once we resolve it, I think it will define itself what chapter it needs to be in.
Bill, you are just a wonder with sharing your screen. Yeah, I think you're right, Bruce. But I think we could plug it in there just so we don't lose it.
How about, Bill, scroll down a little to 7 and 8, please.
When I mentioned this, I wanted just a reference to be, just like we want to maintain the low density nature, we want to maintain the rural feeling, we want to maintain the dark skies that we have. So you'd touch on it in the goals and objectives and then go into more detail under number 6.
Yeah.
Or not 6, but whatever, 5. So
Yeah.
that's, I thought it ought to be, I think that's in line with what Lars was saying. You want your goals and objectives to be the high level, the 35,000 foot lead into the details that end up in 2, 3, 4, 5 onward.
Yeah.
And I know they have these 9 chapters and we're trying to cubbyhole our thoughts in those, but I don't think there's a restriction on having thoughts that don't necessarily get easily cubbyholed. And I think they could still be addressed.
Well, Bruce, we'll still we'll shove them into a chapter someplace because this is the
Okay.
format we're supposed to follow, the
Yep.
chapters. And so let's stick with that versus trying to fight, what the guidelines are, the planning guidelines, because this is coming from planning, planning nirvana someplace. And we'll stick with this outline, but we will take everything that we care about and put it in. That's why we care. That's why we're talking about topics. So
Yep.
versus adding another chapter. Chris or Bill, did you have your hand up? No, okay. All right, what other things are we forgetting?
I did just share something we had put together related to the Dark Sky Initiative that we have made into laminated things. And when new people move to Madaket, we put them on their doorstep or in their mailbox. Bill, can you share that? I think that it's important to note that these bylaws, the residential code only allows for 40-watt bulbs, that they may not be visible from neighbors or public loads, floodlights must be downturned, photo cell illumination is not permitted, which we have tons of that all now going on with all the new builds and with all the pools that are out here, both of which are things that we did address in the previous Madaket area plan. So as we continue along with this group, I think it's really important that not only do we state what we want, but we have to have some ways to enforce what is going on, and that there's pools aren't constantly getting approved via variances, and that dark skies aren't dark skies because anyone puts up whatever they want anymore, and that paper roads aren't getting sold just so people can have a bigger house or a bigger pool. And so I guess, part of it is to have the plan, but the other is to ensure that all the work that we're doing right now results in success of, execution.
Yes.
I haven't seen a version of this in a long time.
It's in the code of Nantucket, and you
Yeah.
know, you get in touch with Marcus Silverstein and he does what he can, but it's not, it's just it's a tide of, this is what you need in order to have the perfect house on Nantucket. You need to have landscape lighting and anyway.
So where is this document available now?
I made this.
But it's,
I
it is
think
the
it's a great
code.
thing. Thank you.
So none of, excuse me, this is Sheila. So none of this is actually enforceable, is what you're saying.
Yes, it is. It's the residential code that was passed by a bylaw.
It is.
So how, so how do people,
It
sorry,
is not enforced. It's enforceable, but it's not well enforced. And there's a
so
lot of,
people don't have to say, apply and say, this is the lighting I'm going to have. And if it turns out to be up lighting, it doesn't matter. There's nowhere to do that.
Well, actually there is.
they don't do it.
What I've found is when we review plans, for example, at the Madaket Advisory Board, and we try to make comments on the lighting, you know, I get slapped down by Linda Williams and whatnot about, hey, you know, it's only about what you can see from the street. But some of this information then has to go to the ZBA for approval. And that's where a public person can make a comment on a plan to go, hey, you know, what does that lighting look like? Is it down lighting? Is it going to shine on the neighbors? But if nobody asks the question, the ZBA is so swamped, they really don't get into the high weeds of these issues unless some public person makes a comment, submits an email to ask the question. So it takes, I guess what I'm saying, it takes diligence and concentration to look at the ZBA list and just go down the agenda, which, gosh, could sometimes have 40 or 50 items on it, and try to pick out the Madaket areas that where you recognize an address, and then go to the view pack and see what's there. But it does take diligence.
Mm.
And I would say most town boards, if you ask them about this law, they wouldn't know. It's not in their consciousness. You can remind them of it, but it's not.
You're absolutely right. Up until 3 years ago, the HDC did not even have a copy of the old Madaket area plan until we sent it to them and say, hey, you know, you have to have this handy. They didn't even know it existed.
Lovely. Well,
Their list of things to do, enforcing and knowing about and enforcing the lighting plan is not anywhere near the top.
yeah.
Kathy?
But if we want to do the dark skies, then it has to be there.
Yes.
And it gives, as Bruce said, you can go to a public meeting and speak. And if you indeed have the data of a bylaw behind you, it's not just because you happen to like dark skies, it's because it is code, you can speak to it. Without that, you're just a bothersome neighbor.
I just added it to the work group Google Drive, so it's in and out in your, along with the outline stuff.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Kathy, did you have your hand?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam. So I think on all of these topics, I think we all agree that really the most near and dear to everyone's heart, and everyone even who's moving to Madaket, is they move here because they like this nature of this village community. And so everything that we can do to enact this, because I think we all have kind of said, we know water came, we know sewer's coming. It's really putting the teeth into zoning and putting the teeth into things like no more paper roads getting turned over to people for the town coffers. Because what that does is just makes people's, the size of their lots larger, and they only want to do that so that they can either block off people from using access to up and down roads in Madaket, in the little dirt roads or walkways, or to make it bigger so that they can get a bigger house or a bigger pool. And so I think that should be one of the postures that we have, is that the paper road yard sale program should be disbanded in Madaket.
Hmm.
Here, here. Did you hear Tom Barata at the town meeting?
Was it the 8th hour or the 6th hour?
Yeah, well, it was like the 4th hour.
The
But
yard sale program has been modified. Now only an abutter can apply to buy a piece of yard sale property. If that abutter does not buy, it cannot be then passed off to anyone. It has to remain town. And that's something that I understand that the Plus Department has done. I don't know if they did that at a town meeting or how it was done, but my understanding is at least that loophole seems to be somehow addressed.
Well, before we go any further down on paper roads, are there any other goals or topics in the goals that we feel like is really left out? I think bringing up dark skies, clarifying coastal resiliency with erosion, sea level rise, flooding makes a lot of sense. And one thing that we're like totally silent on, in which I don't know if we proactively say something in the goals or not, is anything to do with housing and density and kind of all the stuff we don't like. And maybe by saying what our goals are in terms of protecting what we do like is the way to think about it, versus saying, and we want to stop this and we want to stop that, because I'm not sure that's helpful. But I just thought we should bring it up to say, or I wanted to bring it up to you to say, to ask what you want to say.
Any input like this will be very useful. So, you know, if you get a chance, perhaps take a look at this document and, you know, feel free to, you know, enter some thoughts. I don't think you have to necessarily try to come up with it right now as we're speaking, but
Bruce, I don't have edit access.
it's a Word document. You can just do it.
In Google Drive, I don't have edit access. I just tried to edit it.
Let me try fixing that.
You can open it as a Word document.
If
I'll
you
try
do-
fixing it, Kathy. Plus, Sheila, I need to give you access to everything and you don't have access.
If you do it on the drive, though, then it's shared with everyone. I'm not sharing it on my desktop and then changing, you know.
Okay.
I had the same problem and I had to go click the back button to get to the original document and then I could edit it. So if you play with it a little, it might work.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up.
To your point, Diana, I think being positive always has more influence than being negative and saying, we don't want this, we don't want that.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
I just forwarded to everybody on the call the dark skies document that Kathy shared.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Emily, not to put you on the spot, but is there any update on the build out study?
We had an initial meeting with principal and they're basically digging into data right now. So I was planning on checking in with them, well, either today, but I didn't get to send that email yet, or first thing next week to see how that's proceeding. But they, I made them well aware of the MCA's annual meeting in July, and that would be a great opportunity to provide a little bit more of like a formal update or snapshot of where things are at more publicly. So hopefully there'll be something to be able to present by then. But I'll hopefully by our next meeting, I'll certainly have some more info.
Are there any other topics that somebody would like to bring up?
Quick comment. We haven't really focused on the PFAS issue in Madaket and the contamination of the drinking water wells. And I had quite a bit of difficulty at the select board meeting going over the current phase 2 contract for CDM Smith. But I'm thinking that this may be a topic that we might want to fold in somewhere, because it's clear that the groundwater is contaminated from the landfill flowing down gradient, and the science is building and building toward this. But I wanted to make you aware that this is a subject that is pretty much health related, and there's a lot of misinformation being bandied about, and the comments that were made at the select board by a couple of town employees were not exactly accurate, and I'm trying to figure out a way how to gently nudge that along.
Could it be possible that we add the encouragement of all properties in Madaket who request or would like to be able to procure town water?
I think that's a good idea, and I think it would be good to try to fold that into what the long-term plan of the water company is. I think that's very important.
Well, we have town water as a topic under Chapter 7, Services and Facilities, and we have water quality, both drinking water and salt water, under Natural and Cultural Resources. So it seems like we could bring up the threat of PFAS and other contaminants. And we could also do the encouragement versus the we're laying down in the road to stop town water decision that we used to take.
Diana, this is Sheila. Could I ask a question? Is there a report somewhere that says the groundwater is contaminated from the landfill?
There is one report that identified PFAS in the products being dispersed across the land at the landfill by the dewatered sludge. And
who did the report? Where is this report? That's a.
That report was done in October. It was a study that was performed at the request of Waste Options Nantucket. The results were provided to the town. And it's kind of a little bit difficult to find. I have a copy, and if you're interested in that. The other suspicions are, for example, it's very expensive to test a drinking water well right now for PFAS. I tested mine several months ago, just out of curiosity, and I detected 2 PFAS elements in my well. And the only source of PFAS on this part of the island is what we've been dumping in the landfill for the last 6 decades. So, and I am down gradient, groundwater and surface water flow from landfill. There's a free sampling program now by Mass DEP, subcontracted to UMass. Anyone can apply to have their wells tested free. And I encourage everybody to do it and to fill out the application. I can send you the links. Eventually, before a property sells, you're going to have to test. And those tests are several $1,000s now. So if you get a free test, I suggest you do it. Over 90 properties on the island so far have applied for this. And we're trying to move this program along. And I'm kind of getting frustrated at the sandbagging. For example, right now, the town's plan is to use a summer intern to take the samples this summer. But then they say, we're not going to start sampling until September, October. So where does the summer intern go? So we're trying to sort through all these things, as you guys say, gently, but it's going to require a little bit of help.
And where do you apply for this free testing? To whom do you apply?
You apply to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. It's a very brief form to fill out. They'll send you a confirmation asking you to confirm your email, at which time they will accept you as an applicant, but not all applicants will be accepted into the program. I can send you, Sheila, if you would provide your email address, I will forward you the information that I had shared with my neighbors.
Can
Okay,
we take this offline for and you
Yeah.
guys, yeah. Is that
I
okay?
I don't have your email address, so I don't know how to contact you.
He's on the distribution list.
Oh,
but-
okay. What,
okay.
and his name is what?
Bruce Mandel.
Bruce, okay.
Hi, Emily.
And I can forward you the whole distribution list, Sheila, to make sure that you have it, because sometimes people's names don't show up on the email.
Okay.
So I'll
Okay,
send
thank you.
that.
Yeah,
Just Diana,
Yes,
for a point of clarification, on Bruce's update there, the report that talks about the contamination with CDM Smith, the town has pushed back on that because of the type of lab or whatever. So I believe the town's official response is they're researching contamination there because it has to go through their process. So while CDM Smith did the test, thankfully, which
Waste options did it, Bill.
that's what I meant, sorry. So as far as the town's concerned, it wasn't a sanctioned test, which is why they're going through this other hoop. So just in case Sheila reaches out to them and says, where's that report? They're gonna go, well, there isn't a town report.
Mm.
So just, it's semantic, but it's important to note.
So the only way to get it is at Waste Options? From Waste Options?
No, there's another way, and offline, I will discuss it with you by email or in person.
Okay,
thank you. We had said at our last meeting that we would try to continue, at least for the time being, to have our meetings on the second Friday of the month. So that means our next meeting would be Friday, July 9th at 4 o'clock. And you had requested at our last meeting to continue having these via Zoom. And so I just wanted to check with everybody about how you feel.
That's
This
good.
is Bob, fine with me.
yes, that's fine.
I don't know if everyone's here or not. I did offer to Diana to host the meeting at Madaket Marine in our large shop, which is open at both ends with wide doorways. And we have, I don't know, 400, 800, 3,000 square feet of space. So we could be many feet away if people wanted to try alternating Zoom versus a live meeting. It's completely just, I wanted to throw it out there as things are going back to a bit normal.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Kath, just what you missed before when you were fighting with your 3 computers, we haven't been sanctioned yet to do in-person or hybrid. So until we get that, I don't want to say we're stuck with this, but until the town sanctions us to be able to do so, we'll have to stick with the Zoom.
Okay. So that being Bruce,
Thank you. One of the objectives of these meetings was to kind of keep it to about an hour. And if there are no other items that people have to discuss pertinent to what we're doing, I'd like to suggest that we adjourn.
Bob will second that.
Mhm. Me too.
all right, so I have to take a roll call vote. Lars,
In favor?
Peter,
In favor?
Kitty,
In favor?
Bruce. He's nodding.
Yes.
Kathy,
In favor?
Sheila,
Yes, in favor.
Bob,
In favor.
Leslie.
Yes.
That being said, and the clock is dinging. That must be the clock. Oh, Bill, yes, before we hang up.
Yeah, do you want me to reserve with Erica this slot until we get the nod to meet in person, or if we get the nod?
Yes,
Okay. Thank
it
you.
was hard enough finding this slot, so we may as well stick with it. And plus, since none of us want to be working late on a Friday night or we have other commitments, it's a good way to try to end our meetings in a timely way. So thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Thanks,
Great
everyone.
weekend. Thanks. Bye.